Let's begin with the foundations. Welcome to another lecture. Today we consider Insidious, Out of the Further, released in 2026, which extends the franchise's cosmology of the further while introducing new protagonists and arguably a new operational grammar for its hauntings. I'm Alexei, thank you for joining us.
Hi everyone, I'm Priyanka. I help with the readings, and I'm Professor Alexei's teaching assistant. I'm excited to ask the questions that usually come up in section, the ones that seem simple but unlock everything.
To frame our discussion, Insidious, Out of the Further is the sixth installment in the Insidious series and functions as a sequel to 2023's The Red Door. It is an American supernatural horror film written and directed by Jacob Chase, with story credit shared with David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick. Chase ultimately holds sole screenplay credit, which in this context yields a cohesive tonal register between character work and franchise iconography. It's important to understand three core terms. First, the further, a liminal spiritual realm that is accessible by astral projection. Second, astral projection itself, the dislocation of consciousness from corporeal constraint. Third, a new specialization within that practice, the courier, an astral projector capable of transporting objects and under extreme conditions even living entities or structures between realms.
So basically, a sequel that stands on its own, with the further as the operating space and a protagonist whose skill set is rarer than usual. I think the premise centers on Gemma Hall, right? A working mother and dental hygienist who discovers she's a courier, which pulls her into conflict with a cult leader living in the further.
Precisely. Gemma, played by Amelia Eve, becomes the focal point of a lore-heavy confrontation. The antagonist, Cyrus Lamb, portrayed by Sam Spruill, is a blindfolded cult leader who built influence among the dead with promises of resurrection. His doctrine is discovered via a VHS tape, a diegetic device that lends analog unease while delivering exposition. The narrative deploys mechanics established across the franchise: sleep or sedation to enter the further, the red door as gateway and trap, and ethically fraught possession, now put toward a problem of cross-realm transit at unprecedented scale. Next, let's explore relevance. We observe a franchise in the late phase of expansion where mythology must both reward longtime viewers and be legible to newcomers. Out of the Further is relevant because it reframes the series from exploration to manipulation. The living do not merely visit the other place, they can move its contents. And conversely, the dead can stage disciplined incursions. Such a move keeps the franchise competitive in modern horror, where scale and rules clarity often differentiate durable series from one-off curiosities.
And those rules weren't always explicit. I think earlier entries made the further feel dreamlike, whereas here, sedation protocols, possession as a tactic, and the red door used like a trap make the cosmology feel, operational. That shift probably raises the stakes for both plot and scares.
On to our next point, a few orienting facts. First, authorship. Jacob Chase writes and directs, arriving at a script that harnesses franchise continuity without overdependence on legacy protagonists. Second, the score. Joseph Bishara returns, sustaining the series' abrasive strings and percussive shocks. In a delightful rarity, he also appears on screen as the lipstick-faced demon, thus shaping both sonic and visual identity. Chronologically, we note May 2024, when Sony confirmed development of a sixth film, and August 2026, when Sony Pictures Releasing opened the film nationwide in the United States after a Los Angeles premiere earlier that month. Early reactions landed as mixed, with some calling it an improvement over The Red Door. CinemaScore polling yielded a C+, matching the prior entry.
Can we also say two production details that surprised me? The film references New England on screen, but it was shot in Victoria, Australia, locations around Melbourne, Camberwell, Essendon, Kensington, stand in for northeastern neighbourhoods. And I guess the working title we saw in late 2025, Insidious, The Bleeding World, shifted to Insidious Out of the Further in April 2026, which feels like a branding decision to foreground the franchise's key term.
Before we get to the complexities, a brief personal note. I am, as you see, professionally invested in how systems behave under constraint, and horror films provide a controlled experiment in uncertainty. This film's dental clinic sequence, with its procedural restraint and invasive tools, is a tidy demonstration of how to weaponize everyday anxieties. I assure you, my pulse rose faster there than during many conference Q&A sessions. This brings us to three larger questions that can organize our understanding. Priyanka, would you start us off?
Professor, may I ask something simple first? How has the depiction of the Further evolved in the Insidious franchise? And what exactly is new in Out of the Further?
Let's start with the history. Initially, the Further functions as a dream-adjacent afterlife, a foggy minimal architecture punctuated by the red door and discrete entities such as the lipstick-faced demon or the bride in black. Over time, rules accrete: entry via sleep or sedation, sound and light as navigational aids, possession as a risky bridge. Out of the Further advances two crucial evolutions. First, institutionalization within the Further. Cyrus Lamb's cult suggests a social order among the dead, mobilized by ideology and ritual. The VHS tape discovered by Gemma and Nick articulates doctrine, implying that belief persists post-mortem and can be organized tactically. Second, logistical escalation via the courier. Gemma's ability reframes the realm boundary as a membrane that can be transited with freight. By the climax, she relocates an entire house into the Further. Theoretically, this alters the series' metaphysical economy from haunting as leakage to haunting as logistics.
Building on that, does this change the narrative center of gravity? Like, if the Further now has politics, and if couriers can move matter, are we still telling ghost stories? Or are we telling cross-border thrillers that happen to be supernatural?
To elaborate, the franchise migrates from metaphysical tourism to metaphysical governance. In simpler terms, earlier entries asked, "Can we get there and come back?" This film asks, "Who controls the gate and what can be sent through?" This shift permits character-driven stakes, Gemma as mother and courier, Maya as potential conduit, while enabling set-piece innovation. The returning entities, the lipstick-faced demon, the bride in black, the man who can't breathe, Keyface, now operate as ambient proofs that the world remains densely inhabited. They contextualize rather than dominate the plot. In sum, the Further evolves from eerie backdrop to contested jurisdiction.
Professor Alexei, what if the film had retained its original reported title, The Bleeding World? Would audience expectations or box office reception have shifted in a meaningful way?
It's crucial to understand that titles act as priors. Out of the Further activates immediate brand recognition. The term Further is proprietary to the franchise and functions like a keyword, improving recall, trailer comprehension, and frankly, search behavior. The Bleeding World, by contrast, is evocative but abstract. It signals tone rather than continuity. Theoretically, the alternate title might have attracted some curiosity for novelty, yet risked diluting the connection to core mythology and casual audiences. In terms of reception, we can infer that expectations shape satisfaction. If viewers arrive anticipating a further narrative and receive one, grade distributions like the C+ cinema score can stabilize through expectation matching. A more oblique title might have invited miscalibrated expectations. Whether that yields better or worse outcomes is contingent on marketing spend and trailer clarity, but risk increases.
So, I guess the strategic decision was to lean into the brand term. Could you clarify what goes into that calculus? Beyond recognition, I mean.
In this context, studios optimize for legibility under time pressure. A title must signal franchise identity, narrative direction, and promise of set pieces. Out of the Further does all three by implying outbound movement from the spirit realm into our world. Additionally, the April 2026 reveal of the final title occurs late enough to align assets, poster art, the red door motif, trailers, while avoiding consumer confusion from the December 2025 working title. Historically, such shifts reflect A/B testing and internal forecasting. The lesson for students of media is simple. Language is part of the apparatus, not a decorative flourish.
Professor, what are the implications of the film receiving mixed reviews, despite some saying it's an improvement over the previous entry?
First, we should separate two instruments. Critical discourse, which is iterative and often re-evaluative, and opening night audience polling, such as Cinema Score, which captures immediate expectation-weighted reactions. Out of the Further earns a C+, the same as its predecessor, indicating parity and instant satisfaction, despite commentary that praises elements like Amelia Eve's performance, the courier concept, and the climactic house relocation. Over time, consensus can drift. Mixed today may become favorable later as franchise arcs are reassessed, or as the mythology introduced here pays dividends in subsequent entries. The disputed nature of consensus simply reflects sampling, methodology, and the lag between novelty and acceptance.
Can you say more about the factors that drive those divergences? Like, why critics and audiences might align or not align on a film like this?
Certainly, three variables recur. 1. Expectation framing. Marketing that foregrounds the red door and returning entities may prime viewers for a legacy-forward experience. When the film instead elevates new protagonists and logistics of the Further, some portion reports mismatch, depressing immediate grades even if the film is, by several measures, craft improved. 2. Rhythm tolerance. Critics often index fatigue with jump scare cadence while rewarding coherent lore. General audiences vary widely in their appetite for either. 3. Franchise time. Later entries are judged not only as films but as nodes in a network. A mixed initial response can soften if subsequent installments vindicate the new mechanics. It is worth noting the mid-credits scene. Cyrus, restrained in a dental chair and tormented by a dentist's spirit, has sparked debate. Teaser for future arcs or self-contained coda? Such ambiguity can frustrate some and delight others.
So, yeah, moving on. I think the next thing we should talk about is the people. Maybe we can quickly name the key players to ground listeners. Then we can wrap up.
Of course, protagonists and allies. Amelia Eve as Gemma Hall, the courier. Island Austin as Maya Hall, her daughter. Brandon Perea as Nick Mendoza, a police officer whose skepticism gives way to partnership. Maisie Richardson Sellers as Claire, the tattooist at Abandon and a fellow astral projector. Lynn Shea as Elise Rainier, guiding from the Further and at times possessing the living, including Claire and later Lester. Antagonists and instruments. Sam Spruill as Cyrus Lamb, blindfolded cult leader. Elderly acolytes in the living world, Lester, Edna, Patsy, who sedate themselves to project across the street from Gemma's home. Legacy entities return as atmospheric escalation rather than plot engines. The lipstick-faced demon, the bride in black, the man who can't breathe, and Keyface. Production axis. Principal photography in Victoria, Australia, notably Docklands Studios, Melbourne, with suburbs standing in for New England. Distribution axis. Sony Pictures releasing in the US, premiering in August 2026, with a nationwide release later that month. To summarize, Insidious Out of the Further is the sixth entry in a continuing American supernatural horror franchise. It codifies and expands the rules of the further through the figure of the courier and the ambitions of a cult that recruits among the dead. We examine three questions. 1. The evolution of the further from ethereal backdrop to governed, contested space. 2. How the final title's branding, foregrounding the further, likely optimized recognition and expectation alignment when compared with the evocative but abstract working title, The Bleeding World. 3. Why mixed reviews and a C+ cinema score can coexist with claims of improvement, and how such perceptions may shift over time. For further study, consider the microeconomy of visual storytelling in horror, how production design and analog artifacts like VHS shape effect, and how spaces, dental clinics, suburban streets, and the Red Door function as narrative operators. This then completes our present analysis. Thank you for listening, and as always, keep asking good questions even when the lights are off.
Thank you, Professor. And thanks to everyone for listening. Maybe that's something we can come back to later, especially the idea that the boundary isn't just crossable, it's movable. I will be sleeping with the lights on tonight.